Good morning, my name is Antoinette Nirvana and you are listening to the Body and Mind interviews. Body and Mind is your health and wellness online directory for professionals. And today Body and Mind is welcoming Shavain Cherry and he's from Pure O2. Good morning, Shavain, how are you doing?
Fantastic, Nirvana. Fantastic.
We are going to chat to you about the Pure O2, but before we get into all of what it is that you do and you have to offer, would love to know a little bit more about who you are and how did you get on to doing what you are doing today? What was the circumstances that led up to this?
Okay, sure. Firstly, I represent PO2 as product specialist. That essentially means that I have to know everything from technical perspective, a medical perspective, and to an extent, a legal perspective. Having said that, I was very much part of the journey in terms of in creating Pure O2. How it started was literally from a genuine need for myself and a few of my colleagues. So essentially, we were in the retail industry, and over the last few years, the economy has been battling. So retail has really taken a lot of strain. So what we were doing is we were living on coffee, sleepless nights. There was no time, no family time, no time to exercise. And we figured there has to be something to help us perform at our best. We did investigate nootropics, but having seen the multiple recipes out there in the world, we weren't comfortable using that on ourselves. So obviously you wouldn't want to be associated with certain recipes. You wouldn't want to put it out there to the public if it wasn't all good for you. Having said that, we had to go back to the drawing board, and what we looked at sort of ancient teachings, predominantly the Eastern side of things. So we looked at yoga, meditation, and martial arts. And pretty much the one thing in common that they all shared was the way you breathe. And that is how Pure O2 actually started. So we took the breathing aspect, amplified it by 4 times, and used it in our stressful environment, pretty much to make us feel more balanced, more grounded, and without having to take any stimulants or sugars. So realistically, that is it. Pure O2 started from a personal need, purely to survive in the world that we live in today.
If you can give us some details as to who uses it.
Sure, no problem. So Pure O2 actually is it's pure oxygen in an oxygen canister. It's 95% pure. So normal air has, if you're living on the coastline, it's 20 to 21%. If you go inland to Johannesburg, it obviously drops because of altitude. What we did is we concentrated oxygen to a level of 95%. And the reason we did that is we want people to get into the right state of mind or to be physically ready to perform. And martial arts, meditation, and yoga teaches us that your breathing is key to that. Though realistically, when you are faced with real world challenge like in the moment, you can't exactly go and meditate or practice your breathing technique then and there in order to solve your problem. So what it is you literally breathe in a few shots of 95% pure oxygen, which creates the ideal mental and physical state to perform. So Pure O2 actually is 95% pure oxygen in a gaseous state that you breathe in from a canister whenever you're feeling drained, mentally bogged down, or you need to physically perform at your best. Now, there's multiple applications for it. And the first thing that we came across in terms of oxygen is when you tell people about it, they always ask, is it drops or is it a liquid? And we're like, it isn't that. It actually is something you breathe in. And I have to state from the very outset is that if you want more oxygen in terms of blood saturation or at a cellular level, the most efficient way to take in oxygen is via the lung, and which then moves into the bloodstream. Most people are used to ingesting oxygen via liquid form, and I have to be very clear on it, is that there's a very small percentage of oxygen that can actually be absorbed via the digestive system. So I have to clear that up from the very outset. But talking more about the different clients or the different avenues that oxygen applies, it is it applies to so many different areas of life. So I've broken it down into five. So I'm just going to cover that very quickly. So the first is well-being and relaxation. So if you had to think about it, think of oxygen therapy and think about oxygen therapy in a can, because you're literally breathing a higher form of oxygen. Now, how it works really well in terms of relaxation is that when you get stressed, your breathing generally becomes really short. So what happens is adrenaline starts building up, which actually uses a lot of your oxygen. So does cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Now, the only way to overcome that, and this is what I would suggest, is that you work on a breathing technique or you use supplemental oxygen. When you use supplemental oxygen, immediately you start calming down. You're able to think a lot clearer. And what we did was we took a mint aroma and infused it with 95% pure oxygen, because we found that mint naturally refreshes the mind. So from a relaxation point of view, from a well-being point of view, if I can de-stress you and make you more mentally refreshed, then I'm helping you achieve that goal. So that is how it fits in terms of a well-being perspective, as well as a relaxation point of view. I mean, there are claims that oxygen, obviously, from a cellular point of view, is healthy. Your skin looks a lot better, but I assume that's prolonged use, and it's not stuff that we have physically seen as yet. From a training perspective, I mean, martial arts was key in this aspect, because your focus and strength comes from how you breathe. So there's two aspects to this here, because if you're doing something extremely cardiovascular intense workouts, then obviously what's happening is that your body's working at such a rate that the lungs and the heart is really struggling to take in enough oxygen. If you use pure O2 in situations like that, naturally you improve your balance, improve your focus, but also your recovery times. So if you had to think about CrossFit, there's quick bursts of energy and short intervals, and it works really well because the muscles are under extreme stress. When muscles are under extreme stress, they pull your blood flow together with your oxygen flow to your muscles, depriving the mind. If the mind is deprived of oxygen, you lose your form, you lose your focus, you lose your technique. So that's how it works from a cardiovascular point of view. From a high muscular or high strength perspective, generally when picking up something heavy, it is virtually impossible to move the diaphragm while picking up something heavy. So what happens is you saturate the blood with your maximum level of oxygen to allow you to finish the move while picking this heavy object, and that I'm specifically talking about strongman and powerlifting. So you don't end up feeling like really dizzy after you finish the move. So those are the two applications that I'm mentioning in terms of a training perspective. But we have a lot of information on our website about that. Wow. The third I know it's. And you know what? Personally, I've used it in the gym, and I'm able to get a few more of my strongest reps using oxygen. So I do use a cup of coffee before I hit a training session, but I use oxygen as an intro workout to get me a few more reps to put on muscle size and strength. The third aspect would be pretty much studying. Now here again, I already mentioned the stress effect in terms of adrenaline and cortisol. So before an exam, we go through that same process of short breathing, that stressful situation before you walk into an exam room, and that's never ideal because you're trying to remember stuff that you've just studied. Now, scientifically, it's been proven that supplemental oxygen improves memory recall as well as mental clarity, and the studies are put on our website. Personally, having done an MBA, I used it walking into an exam room purely because you never feel that you know everything when walking into an exam room. So I take a few shots before I enter as well as while I was in the exam room, and realistically, it just calms me down so that I can think more clearer. And that is exactly what you want in an exam situation. The fourth aspect would be the hiking perspective, and that's pretty self-explanatory because we all know the higher up you go in terms of altitude, the thinner the air becomes. Now, remember, altitude affects cities as well as hikers. Now, hikers obviously take it to an extreme, but somebody moving from, let's say, Cape Town or Durban moving to Johannesburg can very easily feel the difference in terms of altitude, purely because Johannesburg has an altitude of about 1,750 meters. That's enough for certain people to feel slower, sluggish, fatigued, purely because of the lower oxygen levels in Joburg. Now, if somebody is performing or competing in Joburg but trains in a coastal city, they're immediately at a disadvantage if they don't climatize. Here again, PURE O2 as a supplemental oxygen product is able to shorten that gap in terms of adapting quickly when you need to perform. But back onto the point of hikers, obviously the higher they go up, the more oxygen they need. Well, actually, the higher they go up, the less oxygen there is, which means a supplemental oxygen product like PURE O2 will assist in helping them climatize, but also enjoy the hike a lot more. Yeah, it's actually it's a hangover cure, and the reason it's a hangover cure because what happens is when alcohol is consumed is that the blood starts blotching, which prevents oxygen from getting to vital organs. If you hungover, just a few shots of PURE O2 instantly makes you feel better, and that's just a social side of thing and a fun type of thing. If ever, I know a lot of people listening into this that probably don't consume a lot of alcohol, but if that does happen, you just understand PURE O2 will be there to help you feel better the next day.
Wow. Well, I've got a couple of questions for you, and our time is already gone, but I'm really interested in, especially in the sports arena and things like that, is that something that would be accepted for people who are training and are running in competitions, let's say like the Olympics, that and allowed?
Yes, okay, that's a very good question, right? So up until 2012, supplemental oxygen was banned. It was banned between 2009 and 2012, purely because the Ironman athletes used to use it a lot. Now, when they did ban it, the community, the Ironman community, kicked up a huge fuss about it, saying, "How do you ban something that's consumed in its natural state?" So the World Anti-Doping Agency had to lift the ban in 2012, specifically saying that supplemental oxygen is allowed in all sports. So it is because it allows your maximum oxygen absorption without changing your physiology, it is allowed. Now remember, steroids and any other substance modifies you in a physical sense. Even blood doping is modifying you in a physical sense. This is not modifying you, it's just allowing your maximum potential from an oxygen level. So it can be used pretty much in anything.
Amazing. And so this canister, I mean, I've got this image of, this little trolley, that you see in the movies that people are, carting around with their little oxygen thing and the pipes on their nose. So how big is this, device that you carrying around, and how does the shots work? Is it like an asthma pump type of thing?
Okay, cool. So there again, a good question because I'm not exactly showing you guys it. But the canister is a 500 ml can and it weighs almost nothing because of oxygen being practically weightless. And literally, it has a little spout that you spray. It's a directional spout that sprays into your mouth. And while you spray it, you inhale it from the can. That's exactly it. So you have a 500 ml can, which is more designed for CrossFit, Powerman, the gym type of workout. And then we created a little can. It's 200 milliliters. It's really small, fits into your handbag, and can be used whenever you choose. So we have two products now, the smaller one and the bigger one. The smaller one is stocked at certain retail stores, but not on our website. We only sell the bigger can on our website.
Fantastic. And then I've got one last question to ask you. I'm very intrigued by this. Can you take this on an airline with you?
Okay, sure. So you see, realistically, from the regulations on the airline, they say that you shouldn't have any compressed canister in your luggage. So from a legislation point of view, I would say no, you should not take it on an airline. But we have had athletes that have taken it to the US, but purely put in the stowaway luggage and not in their hand luggage. So they had no problems taking it to the US because they were competing in the strongman events in the US.
Okay.
So from a practical experience, there hasn't been an issue, but from a legislation point of view, it does say that you should not be taking a compressed can in your luggage.
Okay, so in stowaway, it's more acceptable than on the hand luggage in the cabin itself, or is it a complete regulation for compressed air?
No, it's a complete regulation. I mean, people that have taken it internationally literally took it at their own risk in terms of putting it into their stowaway luggage, and it was fine, but it was entirely on their own risk because we could not say that legally it's allowed because legislation says it shouldn't be there.
Could you give us your contact details, website details, which retail stores, for example, can people get this from, and more or less the price range, please?
Sure. So currently we are stocked in all the wellness warehouses, and that's ideal because we are an all natural product with no stimulants, caffeine, or sugar. In terms of other stores, it's the Santon NutriBalance in Santon City, Health Works in Hyde Park, Health Choice in Pavilion. Our online site, you can buy it online. Our website is www.pureo2.co.za. We have a fantastic Instagram platform. So if you want to check us out, that's at PureO2SA. That's our handle, and that applies to Facebook as well. And the recommended retail price is about 230 Rand for the big can and 120 to 130 Rand for the smaller can. But obviously, we cannot dictate pricing to our retailers. It's entirely up to them. But on our website, you will see it at 230 Rand for a big can.
Okay, and how long does a 500, is it milliliters, did you say? How long does a 500
Yes, and so that's the
can kind
size.
of last?
Well, we've tested it at 81 second bursts. A 1 second burst is holding down the nozzle at 1 second at a time. Realistically, you should get 60 to 65 because it does take some practice holding down a trigger for a second. So essentially, you should get 60 to 65 shots out of the can. You only need 2 to 3 depending on the stress or the environment you're under. If you are competing in strongman, you can finish a can in 4 uses purely because of the amount of oxygen you need for doing what you're doing. But somebody who is actually doing light training or using it for studying, you'd only use 2 to 3 shots at a time. So the can pretty much last you 20 uses if you use it at that level. Realistically, you can't really overdose on oxygen at the pressure output. And if one had to overdose on oxygen from a medical perspective, you would have to breathe oxygen every breath non-stop for 24 hours of 99.9% pure oxygen to have any side effect. So virtually impossible.
Wow. Okay, well, thank you very much, Shavain. I'm really excited and interesting to chat to you. Just again, if you have missed any of the contact details, please go to our website www.bodyandmind.co.za, and don't forget about our beautiful app now available on Android and iPhone, and you can download that from your Play Store. That is the Body and Mind app, where you can find also all of the details, therapists, products, and modalities that we have on our database. Thank you very much, Shavain, for chatting to us today. And
thanks, Nirvana.
Yeah, we look forward to maybe having some more conversation around this amazing product. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Cheers, guys.
Bye bye.